Good evening, everyone. My name is Jaquise Moore. And for those who do not know, I am the host of this awesome page, Learning with Jasmine. My daughter has autism, and this is a safe place, you guys. This is a safe place, you guys. Sorry, I have my new phone. I need to put this somewhere else. Okay. Okay. So, this is what happens when you do live things. Okay. So, anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that this is part two. Okay, if you have not watched part one, I advise you to watch it later on. Don't stop this right here. This is gonna be still be good. So listen to part two, part one, a little bit later on, and then part three is coming up. You guys, I am so happy that this person is gonna be back on here and to share. For those who don't know, we tell it we tell the truth and we help and support other families. And so what I like about this segment is that uh, we have all walks of life individuals come on, and whether they're a therapist or a parent, and they share some great tips and some stories, and so it will help and support other families just like us who have a child who has autism or any other diagnosis. So please introduce yourself, and then we will get started.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me again. I enjoyed myself last time. So my name is Lowry Jane Trigg Edwards, and I am a Montessori preschool teacher and a nanny, a caregiver, a tutor. I wear a lot of different hats, and I've been on the special needs advocacy committee. I think that's where I think that's where I learned that I had to advocate for myself and for my child the most of anything that I've done. That really was beneficial to me. That's something I would actually recommend. Is that I know it's difficult when you're I know it's difficult when you're involved with your own children. You're kind of too busy to maybe look outside of that and to join organizations where you could help. But that's one of the things that I love about you is that you've taken the time to do that. When you're in the throes of it, you're thinking, I don't have a spare minute. I couldn't do that. But even if you could just spare a minute here or there, you just never know how many people and how many lives you're going to be able to help with. Just sometimes just having a shoulder to cry on is all that somebody might need.
Mm-hmm.
So I am on the spectrum as well, and I grew up in 9 foster homes, and I'm pretty sure because I was on the spectrum that played a big part in that. And at a time when a lot of diagnosis, separate diagnosis of things of lower or higher functioning or Asperger, all these different kinds of titles that have come about and come and change and come and go. But they weren't really a thing then, so nobody quite knew. They just knew that you didn't fit in the box the way that they wanted you to. I've fostered over 100 hard to place children, some of which were on the spectrum. And so I feel like I have a pretty good base for the knowledge and advice that I might be able to give. And I'm a parent of 3 neurodivergent children who are now all adults. And that might be the best of all, is knowing that I meet a lot of people that wonder what's life going to be like later, what is in store for their children. Are their children always going to live with them? Will their children ever live out on their own? How is this going to happen? Will there be a lot of changes, or the state that their child is in now, are they going to be able to improve or have successes or things like that? So I think that that's been helpful in the people that I meet, that they see my 3 children and they see that all that we went through, and it wasn't easy. And don't be fooled by that high functioning title. It means it's different functioning. It's not, it doesn't mean anything other than different functioning. And so it's just as difficult as any other diagnosis. You know, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we all struggle with it. So in any event, we had to experience things with sensory disorders and ADD and anxiety and depression, panic disorders, agoraphobia, social issues. And, you know, everyone's experience is different. I've heard you say that our experiences are different, and in some ways they are the same. So it kind of doesn't matter what level. You can hear somebody tell a story, and in your head, you're thinking to yourself, well, my child doesn't do that particular thing, or it doesn't have that particular trait, or I don't think my child is on that same kind of level, or isn't as violent or whatever. But it doesn't matter. We're all in this together. And what your child is doing now may be different than what your child's doing next year or even next month. So so you never really know. The last segment we talked about my first child.
Mhm.
Today I was hoping to perhaps talk about my youngest child, both on the spectrum, both very different and in some ways the same. My youngest child is a girl, and that in and of itself was different than the other child, which was a boy, because it was not quite as obvious. And my understanding is it's often not.
Okay. So for those who do not know, the general statement for boys with on a spectrum is 4 years old. Around 4 years old is when they will possibly, the doctor will say, okay, maybe he has autism, or the type of thing. But for girls, it's around 7. And for Jasmine, it was, no, she didn't have autism until at age 7. So it was a 7 mark. But I saw some things at age 6. It was like, hmm. But I would say the scale of what they were saying, that she was 2 or 3 years behind. So it did not kind of register until around 6 years old, that type of thing. So that's what Lori's basically talking about, is the age bracket from boys to girls, but not saying that all girls that are on the spectrum will only be 7 years old. I actually used to be a childcare teacher, and I had some kids that were girls, and they were on the spectrum in the age 3. So it can vary but on a general timeline, it will be 4 for boys and 7 years old for girls. So that's what Lori is talking about.
Sure. So so there's that, and there's also just traits that male and female traits, things that people are, what you would expect a boy to be doing versus what you'd expect a girl to be doing.
That's right.
And so that made things different. And they're different siblings, so they have different, we're all individuals. So there were those issues. Now my daughter was diagnosed when she was 6. And of course we saw things earlier, but we weren't sure, because I don't think I understood how different one child from another could be on the spectrum. I think I saw my son and I thought, well, she's not exactly like my son, so she must not have the same diagnosis as my son. I didn't understand perhaps at the time that they could have the same diagnosis and be worlds apart in different behaviors or traits or things like that. I got a lot of flack at first when I looked into perhaps that she might be autistic. I assumed that others might have that problem as well, but I got a lot of flack about it because they thought that perhaps I was seeing things in her that weren't really there because I had one child on the spectrum. It was like they thought I was transferring or something and thinking that another child must be just like this other child. I don't know. But anyway, I did get a lot of flack. That was a big problem at the beginning, of them saying that you're just looking for things. You're looking for things that are similar to your son. And that, so I didn't really get a lot of support as far as that went. Those that spent a lot of time with her, however, were on board and thought that I was correct, that maybe there was a diagnosis there. I'm not sure why they gave me such a hard time, because my understanding is that if you have one child on the spectrum, there's a 50% chance that your next child will be on the spectrum and further children will be on the spectrum. So with such a high percentage of 50%, I don't know why they didn't just assume it probably was correct that she was on the spectrum instead of giving me such a hard time. But that was my experience.
And we have to stop for a second. This is, any diagnosis is a group of people that have researched things and they're like, okay, this is what's supposed to be, and this is what, this is the level of it. And so even with a diagnosis that may have people have known for years, people are still learning. People are still researching themselves and then putting it on a platform and saying this is what's happening. So this is how many years ago versus to now. So even those individuals that you like, okay, well, I didn't have my child or my grandchildren or whoever it was, years ago versus now. But the thing about it is that there's so many research that's on the internet versus it was just from a doctor. Like 10 years ago, it wasn't like how it was 5 years ago. And 5 years ago wasn't about what 1 year. Every single year, there's like a update version of any diagnosis. And so it is so important to, one, even if it comes down to a big no, one time, you guys, your child, um, you know, what they dislike and how they react, and so it's so important to kind of like not listen to the no's, the one time no, because in reality, if we listen to the no's, we have all these other resources available for children who are on the spectrum or not. And Jasmine doctor said no to a lot of things. Oh no, she's not on the spectrum. Oh, she's, whatever the case may be, and oh, she's going to not walk. Oh, she's not going to pick up a pencil, type of thing. And if we listen to the no's, then we're not advocating for our children. So it's so important to also look at the time. This is, and I'm not sure if you want to reveal how old your child is now.
Oh, that was 15 years ago.
So 15 years ago versus 10 years ago versus 7 years ago versus 3 years ago. So it's so important to really consider those things, those timelines, and don't listen to no's. Just go for, and your child basically.
Yes, we do. And it was interesting that you say that. As a teacher, I did recommend to a parent once that I thought that their child needed to be assessed, and I thought that they were on the spectrum. They went immediately and delved right into it, went to the place that I actually even told them to go to, and they came back and said, no, they're not on the spectrum. And I was floored. I'm I'm not a doctor by any stretch, but I feel like I pretty much know it when I see it. And I felt very comfortable. I wouldn't have told them that if I hadn't have thought that there was truth to it. And lo and behold, I guess that I'm very appreciative that they trusted me, but they went and had her assessed somewhere else. And unbeknownst to me, and then came back and told me that the diagnosis was there. And I asked them, what made you go, if you got a no, what made you go and check again? And the response was, because we trust you and you seemed so sure. And I thought, I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I made sure they understood how I thought that the diagnosis was wrong. And I said, I get that I'm not a doctor, but I'll tell you, a lot of times doctors and things that we took our children to spent 10 minutes with them and then sent us packing. Well, 10 minutes, in my opinion, is not enough for you to make a valid assessment of this child and all their abilities, strengths, weaknesses, etc. And so I don't think I don't know how long they spent with the child the first time, but I'm really glad they took her back the second time. She ended up being actually PDD. So it was a pervasive developmental disorder is what they diagnosed her as, which is still part of the spectrum. And she was able to get a one-on-one aide that came into the classroom with her and helped her tremendously. And if she hadn't had that, who knows where she would be.
We talked about this again last time. We talked about it last time, you guys, and here we go.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the child. It's about our child and our individuals' children. And so it's so important. I know that sometimes you just don't want your child to have a diagnosis, but when they have the resources available for them, they can grow, they can expand upon, they can have the gains, they can have all the steps that they are going to take, whatever the individual's independent looks like. That is a gain. That's something that it should be. Now, let me tell you, this is throwing it off here, but learning with Jasmine, we're on all throughout the different networks, but Jasmine herself is in piano, okay? And just for her to practice, and she's so excited, she actually has her own channel now on YouTube. And she is so excited. But why is that? Is because there's always that moment that I need to tap into whatever it is, that independent, that whatever that looks like. She didn't have that. So if it was a, I don't know if I don't want to do this. I don't want her to have a title, a diagnosis to her name or whatever, then I wouldn't see the child that I see now. And so the person who wants to do something, versus like, oh, I'm just, going along, but not really understanding or not really, have a positive outlook of everything, that's going on. So Jasmine's ability is not just because there's support, but because she feels like, wow, I'm doing something. So she is so excited with when she's doing her piano videos on YouTube, and that's just something. But I know for a fact, like you were saying, is that if there was no diagnosis, then what could, not saying that the child cannot do anything, but there's so many more opportunities for the child to grow and to have that gain. So yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my daughter started off very cranky, very colicky baby, a very scowly toddler and preschooler, and she clung to me all the time. She was very easily frustrated. She was agitated. She had a lot of OCD kinds of behaviors. She had problems with sensory things, a lot of anger, head banging. She had allergies and asthma. She had a speech disorder. And I found great help. I'm always excited when people have resources that you can check into so that you don't feel alone. I felt alone. But there was a book I found at the library by Doris Rapp, and it was called Is This Your Child? And it is mainly about allergies, but she makes a correlation in her book. There's a big correlation that refers to children that are on the spectrum, but I don't think spectrum was a word then. the autistic spectrum wasn't a thing, but it was just autism then. But a lot of children who were being diagnosed with autism, she was finding not that they didn't have autism, but that it was complicated and exacerbated by allergies. And that was something I had never heard of before I read that book. And I was like, I don't know about this. And they certainly weren't saying your child only has allergies and throw out the whole notion that your child is autistic. That was not the point of the book, but it was it's a big book for sure. But it gave a lot of ideas and things to try and ways to ascertain if allergies were what were complicating matters. And in the case of my son, they definitely were complicating matters.
I'm thinking about that right now for Jasmine, and that is definitely asthma and allergies. Okay.
So just something, food for thought to, if somebody's looking at, and again, it was Doris Rapp, and is this your child? And I swear by the book, saved my life as far as I'm concerned. That was back before we had a diagnosis. So I didn't even know what we were working with. And doctors weren't being helpful. And I just, I was grasping at straws of what to do. And that book, I just felt like it was it just saved me, that it gave me some hope. It gave me some ideas. It gave me things to look into and check into. And sure enough, it did make a big difference. The allergies in his life, the things that he was allergic to, both food and environmentally, made a big difference in his behaviors, in his ability to concentrate, things like that. And once we did some elimination diets and figured out what things were triggering him, then we were able to eliminate those out of his life. And leaps and bounds, huge difference. No, it didn't change the fact that he was autistic. It did, however, make things more manageable for him.
I wanted to say it's so important, parents, to definitely look into the environment. Now I know, of course, the things that we could possibly see versus the things that we cannot see in our environment. It is so important. Also, of course, what we eat, what we give to our children, but definitely the things I didn't understand. And here's a little tip, you guys, on Learning with Jasmine YouTube. If you look under, there's a Autism Naturally Recover video. There is a lady that I interviewed a while back, and she talks about the internal things that you don't see in the environment. So that's just a little tip right there. But it is so important to, we see, okay, we hear about the mold, but there's some other things that we do not know. And also what's in our foods that, we just think, oh, it's dye. That takes a lot, okay? We're not supposed to eat dye, okay? We're not supposed to put dye in our food, period. It does affect ourselves. It does affect whatever internally. It's so important. Kool-Aid, back in the day, you are not supposed to eat that, drink that. And you wonder why your child was bouncing, a child without the diagnosis.
Right.
So it's so important to just really check into that. Yes, absolutely.
So she was very independent, very stubborn, very determined.
Yeah, stubbornness, right?
We were
to be kind of stubborn a little bit.
These were just kind of her little personality traits that that are her. And we were late to everything. I am not lying. There's an autism, it's a book and a video called Mozart and the Whale. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's a line, Mozart and the Whale. And I loved it because there's a line in there about how you could give them 8 extra hours and they'd still be late. That was us. It didn't matter if somebody would say, oh no, we'll give you an extra hour. We'll give you an extra 2. It wouldn't matter how many hours you gave us. We were still going to be late to everything that we went to. We were so late to school, so many absences. I can't even tell you. I know we're on my daughter now, but with my son, I know a statistic, and that was in 4 months' time, the school determined that he went to school 16 days out of 4 months. I mean, that's how much school he was missing. So there's kind of no point in him even being there if he was going to be missing that much school. And it was because there was always some issue, some, whether real or not, illness on his part, that his head hurt, his stomach hurt, something, he couldn't breathe. There was always some medical reason that would keep him, he felt nauseous, he felt this, he felt that, that kept him from going to school. No, there was some somatization there.
Jasmine, before, when she was younger, I know about that when she was like in first grade. Didn't realize though, here's a little side note, you guys. Make sure if your child has asthma, please make sure that, and you need to research. I didn't research it because I just like, oh, the doctor told me, the doctor gave it some, but make sure if they have an inhaler, usually now they have supposed to have like 2 things. But one to open up the lungs, and the other one was supposed to clear out the inflammation. Well, the doctor gave me 2 medicines that actually just open up the lungs. So what happened to the inflammation? It was still in there. And I'm just giving her. And then I went to the other doctor and they said, why is she getting 2? The same type of medicine. So it's so important. Okay. And I'm just thankful that that nothing happened to my daughter. But it's so important to, check those things out. And allergies and asthma is related. It is so related to each other. And so it's, that's something that I never really thought about was, allergies and asthma with autism. That's something I need to check out. Definitely.
It's very, very common, actually. There seems to be a connection with autism. That does not mean that every person with autism has allergies and asthma, but there does seem to be a high preponderance of people with autism that have asthma and allergies. And like I said, I'm on the spectrum. I also have asthma and allergies. And in fact, all of my children have asthma and allergies, and we're all on the spectrum. So if we're any indication of it, then it works along with those statistics that there is a connection. So I'm just pointing out about not just, I make fun about how we were late, but it's not funny when you're missing school. It's not funny when so many tardies equal an absence. It's not funny when you're missing the instruction first thing in the morning for the first hour because you can't make it to school on time. And
probably what I'm just, you don't have to say it, but in some cases for a parent, it is actually based upon if that child is willing to do something too. For Jasmine, it was sometimes a struggle to get, well, she still kind of get a struggle to get up, but it's a struggle to get up, maybe about 15-20 minutes to get into the bathroom, maybe 15-20 minutes to get dressed because she's having so many meltdowns. So those things, for those who are listening, is not about, oh, well, you need to wake up a little extra time. Yeah, maybe that's true. But I'm gonna tell you this right now. There has been some tantrums and meltdowns when she was in the public school system. Now I'm actually homeschooling her, of course, COVID-19, whatever. But before, when she was going to the bus stop, some days we literally just made it, and that wasn't because, oh, I got out late. It's because there was tantrums or meltdown.
Right.
Before.
And you can't determine how long that's going to take. So there were a lot of things that people said, well, you just need to get them up earlier. Well, that's not really the answer. We got up as early. We went to bed as early as we could. We got up as early as we could. We did all kinds. Well, you need to set a timer for them. You could set a timer all day long. That's why that movie of Mozart and the Whale was so perfect to me, because they said give him 8 extra hours and he was still going to be late, because it was not about getting extra time does not fix the problem. But in any event, she had a lot of problems with running away from school. I got calls all the time about, we don't know where your daughter is. That's a scary thing for a parent, to not know where your daughter is, and the people who are watching her do not know where she is. So I can't tell you how many calls about that we got. And then sometimes there would be that she had actually left the campus, and then that was a whole nother ball game. About where was she at, how do we get her back, and how do you convince her to stay on the campus. And she stood up to authority like nobody's business. She had no problem saying things to the vice principal of a school. This is America. It's a free country. I can do what I want to do. She was interesting. So we had our share of IEPs. Those are, for those of you who haven't had them, I hope yours go well. I hear some people have very successful IEPs, but back in the day, they were not very successful, and they were very difficult. I dreaded the IEPs, and we had a million of them, these little meetings. Some people call them SSTs that lead up to the IEPs, or all these different acronyms of things. But the point is, it's a group meeting of everybody involved in the child's life at school, trying to work on strengths, weaknesses, and goals, and how we can get them, to be successful.
And parents, you are the biggest supporter and advocate. And it based upon, of course, language. I am an English second language instructor. And if you do not speak, which is usually like in America, it's English, then you can ask for an interpreter, like Spanish or French, whatever your language is. And also, even if someone is like maybe in the school system or educator, you can invite them to. Definitely. But there's so many school languages in the meeting that if, just for the IEP, that if you don't understand, not the language that you speak, but the language that the professionals say, acronyms, if you don't understand that, stop, ask the questions. What does that mean? What is this gonna be useful for? So anyway, little side note, there's another video called on YouTube, Learning with Jasmine, called Special Education. The special educator is actually explaining everything in the interview. So go on my channel for that. Okay, go ahead.
Wonderful.
That was a commercial break.
My advice for your IEP is that you ask for them to record it. You have to ask that 24 hours ahead of time. You have to give them 24 hours notice to do that. And, I say this as a parent and as an educator. You want to hold people accountable. And if someone knows they're being recorded, they're a little more careful with their words. That's all I'm going to say about that. They're more careful with their words, what they say. They're being held accountable for everything. And so that would be my highest recommendation.
It is a law record. You can go to court if need be. Okay, so I don't want to really talk about all this other stuff.
That's a whole other day.
And you know me, if you don't know me, you guys, I'm straight to the point. I don't sugarcoat anything. So just a little FYI.
So yeah, you could have a whole session on IEPs, but I'm sure there are. But that would be my number one, is to say, to ask for it to be recorded. Not that I ever needed to do anything with that recording, but people just knowing they're being recorded.
Recording it because, I never thought about recording it, but that's good. That's a good advice.
And sometimes, I mean, you can take notes, but you have to take sometimes really fast notes with all that's going on. And you can come away, I did anyway, I came away sometimes feeling like I don't remember all the things that were said. And yes, they do give you a paper that tells you what went on, but it's not going to tell you everything that went on. And sometimes it's important to have those details of things somebody said, opinions they said, ideas or suggestions they might have made that didn't get down on paper. So I just think that that's helpful to have. But in any event, she had a lot of OCD issues, my daughter, a lot of OCD things, especially with her toys, a lot of rigidity, order. We had to use a lot of things in school like fidgeting toys, headphones. Now those are normal, but back in the day, those were unusual things to be asking, can she have a fidget toy and can she wear headphones to cancel out the noise in the classroom? Those were crazy requests at the time. Now they're pretty mainstream, but at the time, no one had heard of those kinds of things, but there we were asking for it. We tried charter schools and public schools, and we tried virtual academies online, and whatever it took. We tried homeschooling. We tried whatever it took. Just to give you a little nutshell, in kindergarten, she wrote a poem about wanting to die and go live with the angels. So that drew a little bit of attention from the school. Then in first grade, she wrote a picture. They had to draw, write in her journal, and she drew a picture of her hanging from the ceiling fan. A little disturbing. Had to have a few meetings about that picture that she drew. Then she posted online when she was about in fourth grade or so. She posted online something about wanting to lick the blood off the car from where we hit a bird. Just really unusual, disturbing kinds of things about death, about wanting to die, about licking dead things. She would say things to me in her meltdowns. She would say some things to me like she was going to kill me in my sleep. So, I didn't sleep very well because I was always worried she's going to harm me. She said to her sister things like, I like your hair, I wish I could wear it. She said things like, I like your eyes, I wish I could have them. Various things that they were just very disturbing kinds of things. I'm not going to lie, there were times we worried someday, did we have a serial killer on our hands? And, we make light of it sometimes, we joke about it, but it was serious at the time. It was a little disturbing of these kinds of things that are going on. The suicide rate in autism is really high. And I don't think people took us.
And I'm COVID-19, just in general, the children's mentality and what we allow our children to watch and what we listen to, I'm sky high just in general about suicide, from little young age to older. It is so important, you guys, to, to be present.
Yes.
Be present.
I think a lot of times
yes,
people think that that is something for teenagers and older, and it's not. I'm here to tell you that those thoughts are there when they're much younger, and you need to be looking for those and be aware of those things. Be aware of their mental state. It's very important, and I just think maybe more so now, but then no one took me seriously when I said, I'm worried that she's going to do something. I'm worried she's going to harm herself. And the comments were, I'm sure she'll be fine. Like, well, I'm not so sure. When your child is drawing pictures of hanging from a ceiling fan, it is hard to remain calm and think that everything is okay. She couldn't express her feelings, but she could draw it, and she drew it quite well. There's no other way to take you hanging from a ceiling fan. We all know what that means, you know. And so she was disturbed, she was upset, and she needed somebody to talk to those things about. And just sweeping it under a rug and saying those are grown-up things that a kid doesn't think about, well, they do. They do think about it, and the rate is really high. So it is something to be, it's an ugly topic and nobody wants to think about it, but it's there. And I'm just say, just be very aware. Be very aware of, you know, if you have things in your bathroom that they could harm themselves with, and they're closed in the bathroom and they're upset and depressed and having a meltdown, you need to think about what do they have access to that they could harm themselves with. So just be, I mean, I'm not trying.
I don't have, Jasmine does not have scissors in her room. And not because I feel like she's going to harm herself. I just don't have scissors in her room, you know? And so that's something that she has to ask for. And she's 9. And do I feel like she is going to do anything harmful to herself? No. I just don't like any objects in her room that could, and she's cutting, I want to make sure that she is going to ask me first before she, so that's something that, I would definitely check. Parents with smaller children, definitely, some things that you just be like, oh, okay, they're just doing art. But I'd rather her ask me for scissors than for me to find out that she has scissors.
Right, right. So we pretty much, she had a lot of other issues, of course, but she had a bedwetting issue that progressed into day wetting. It wasn't just in the nighttime. And that is very common as well.
Right.
I wasn't aware at that time about autism and a connection between not understanding their body, not being able to feel and know that sensation that they needed to use the restroom. It was just like all of a sudden they have to go. And I remember thinking, didn't you have a buildup? I mean, didn't you know 15 minutes ago that you might have to go? But no, she didn't know 15 minutes before. She didn't know until right then, and right now is when I have to go, kind of thing. So there was a lot of day wetting kinds of incidents, and also because she had a lot of sensory issues of smells and things like that, and different places. So she wouldn't use a restroom that wasn't her own restroom. If we were out and she had to use the restroom, she would rather wet herself than to go into a restroom that she was unfamiliar with.
I didn't understand that until maybe 3 years ago. Wondering why. I mean, this girl went to the bathroom before she went on the bus. And they said, oh, Jasmine went to the restroom. Jasmine did not go in the restroom. Jasmine went inside, but did not go to the bathroom. She did not go in the bathroom. And she held her urine so many days from the time she left the house at 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She will hold it.
Yeah. And when we'd say, why didn't you use the restroom? It was often because it smelled. The restroom smelled. And it could have smelled yucky, or it could have smelled like a different kind of soap, like sometimes there are cleaners and things. She's very sensitive to that sort of thing. So so if it was an unfamiliar smell, or a smell that was strong and she didn't like it, or whatever, she wasn't having any part of it. So that was a big issue. But in any event, we had a lot of, and once again, she was diagnosed as high functioning. And so they told us there were no services at the time for high functioning. It was like, here's your diagnosis, but nothing we can do for you. Good luck, goodbye. And that was devastating. Like, you can't tell me, here's this issue, here's this label, but there's nothing we can do for you. Seriously, there were no resources. There wasn't anything. It was very frustrating. And I was very overwhelmed with having 3 children of my own. And my husband was gone at that point. So I'm autistic, and I'm raising 3 autistic kids. And it's the blind leading the blind. I'm just saying it was a little much. But the way we express it is that the youngest child had us walking on eggshells. everybody was walking on eggshells at all times. We were so worried about setting her off that you had to be so careful of making sure of everything that you said and did went the way she was going to want it to go, because heaven forbid you upset her. Life was pretty chaotic if you upset her. So you had to, it was very unfair. And her siblings say that it was very unfair. They felt like everything had to go her way. We had to do whatever she wanted. Was that healthy and right? Absolutely not. I'm not suggesting that that was the way to do it. It is the easy way at the time. It is definitely the easy way to give in and do whatever she wants. It was not fair to her siblings, but sometimes that is how it went. Just to keep the peace, it was easier to just give in and let her have her way.
And we're not talking about a child who stomps her feet and walks away. We're not talking about we're not talking about that, you guys. We're talking about and not to like really go into like, you know, looking at your daughter, but I know for myself, I was cooped up in this room for a reason at times. Why? Because I didn't know what would trigger her. Now I realized I was a trigger. So
Right.
anytime I would go up to her, she would be punching me, whatever. But that's what we're talking about, you guys. We're not talking about a child who walks, you know, stomp her feet 3 times and walk away. We're talking about literally a physical, awkward, you know, physical attack towards us. Okay, that's what we're talking about.
I am talking about violence for sure. Violence with her sister, and violence. I mean, she could take you down. She was a little thing, but she could take you down.
They have the
And
extra strength, guys. The extra strength. I don't know where that comes from.
but she took me down more times than I can count. She has pushed me downstairs. At one point, I had a broken foot, not from her, but a broken foot, and she stomped on my broken foot. She's very well aware the foot was broken and in a brace, but she stomped on it anyway. You know, she was very frustrated, like I say, and so sometimes it had to do with just keeping everybody safe. That it was easier to just give in than it was to upset her and have her with a full-blown violent attack. Furniture flew. I mean, large pieces of furniture even flew. It was it was scary, is what it was. It was scary for everybody. It was an abusive home. That's what it felt like, that you were potentially going to be abused at any moment. And so we were walking on eggshells, and had to be careful about everything you said, and you had to think ahead of time before you said something. How might this affect her? How might she take this? What might she do if you say this? How can we avoid that? Everything was, it was always seemingly orchestrated. It was not a natural way of living, for sure. She was violent in the car when you were driving. You had to be careful about where was she in the car so that she couldn't kick you while you're driving and end up in an accident and things like that. It was that was, you know, very disturbing. She's a very picky eater. And I want to go back. We had to, at one point, we had to take the doors off of her bedroom door to make sure she was safe.
She still has it. Now, she's good now, but she still has it. Why? Because I could see in between the peephole, you know, where the where the knob was. I could see if she's okay. I'm not putting it back on. And she's good now, but you know, I'm like, no, I was just keep it like this. But I definitely understand.
For her safety, I felt like that at some points we had to do that. And sometimes we had to remove everything out of her room so that she wasn't throwing dressers upside down and such like that, for her own safety. I didn't want her getting hurt if she pulled a dresser down on herself, or
while you're trying to do whatever in the room, that she can possibly throw it at you too. So it's definitely.
Absolutely. I would say on practically a daily basis, we had to decide whether we were calling the police or not. I never called the police on her. I probably should have called the police 100 times. Um, in retrospect, I wish that I had called the police. I was always worried about making things worse. I was always worried, what if I call the police and they put her in some kind of facility and life ends up being worse for her? What? And so I kept thinking, maybe she'll just calm down and everything will be okay. And wouldn't it be better if I just waited, an hour and things calmed down? Because what if I called the police and I've wrecked her life because of it? What if there's some kind of what if she has like a record because of it? What if there's some file on her? What if it affects things she wants to do in life because there's some file, some kind of medical history file of her poor behaviors that were scary, or things like that. And so I erred on I wish, in retrospect, I think maybe there were times that she could have used the help. But I was worried it wouldn't be help. I was worried that it was going to be worse. And so just, I mean, your own child, I suppose, and when is the right time that you need some outside assistance.
And let me talk to you all about your insurance, you guys. If you guys have, especially like if you guys have state insurance, okay, you can call your insurance company. Most insurance companies have the numbers on the back of the card, right? Yes, and it will say nursing hotline or something like that. You call that number, they can talk to you for free. So I was in desperate need one day, and they said, yeah, so do you want to talk to a nurse? And how much is that? No, it's free. I will talk to them. Yes, thank you. And while I'm talking to her and I'm telling her it's everything, the frustration, and she is literally on the phone for 3 hours with me. 3 hours with me, giving me some calm, and it's just, and while she was doing that, I understand about the foot thing. She was punching me in the back, and she knows I have back pain, and then a little smirk on her face that she did. And I was like, oh, she just did that. She was like, okay, I need for you to calm down. But she did, I need for you to calm down. And I'm telling you right now, that is one of the things that I enjoyed, like just finding out people who understand and wanting me to realize that, okay, I'm not alone, type of thing. So this is what learning with Javelin is all about. And those are the type of things that I kind of like, okay, let me have this moment. But it is so important to definitely research and ask questions. And not only that, to do the best interest of your child. It is literally, it's for your child's safety, number one. Then it's for you, number two. If there's any siblings around, if there's any children around. I mean, as an educator, we had to remove that child, not because they were, oh, let's remove their child because we don't want that child to be, no, but because of the safety. We have to make sure that he's safe, but make sure that the other children are safe. So it's so important. So if it had to be no toys in the room, nothing that's sharp, and not saying that, oh, your child will do something, but to be mindful of that, because you never know. You never know. And this is like literally, when I say it's a life and death situation, it is literally a life and death situation. So many children get hurt because of things that are sharp, the things that are not supposed to be for children, And I work for an organization. that children, unfortunately, due to gun violence, they don't have any parents, or the parents don't have the children because of gun violence. It is so important to be mindful of the what if moments, because we don't know. And so I think that's where we're addressing, is that make sure that you're the not only are we're, the environment is safe, but when those moments come, that literally I have done this, moved everything away and put on some soft music and just make sure that that she understands that I'm here. I'm here for her. There's a safe, you're not in trouble. All those things, mommy loves you, all those things that comes along with everything else. So it's so important, but also be mindful what's in the room.
Sure, sure. Well, and she had to be removed. She would, if we went to the store, she would crawl into places where she wasn't supposed to go and be, and then would refuse to come out. And it would take all of the staff of a store trying to get her to come out from wherever it was that she was in. And sometimes they would threaten to call the police to have to get her out of things. So, it was difficult. Who's going to watch her while I go places? That was tricky. And it was it was a very difficult time. We went to the library. They told us to wait outside, call them ahead, and they would give us the books at the door so that we wouldn't come inside. So it got to a point where I felt like we couldn't even go anywhere. We couldn't go into a store. We couldn't go to the library. We couldn't do things that people take for granted as your everyday errands. Everyday errands were not a thing. We have a lot of choices now. You can have things delivered to your house. We didn't have that then. So I couldn't just call and have a delivery of things. So we had to go out and had to try to get things that it was very difficult. We were, asked not to come in. We were asked to leave many a place, many a store. She would run away from home. When she would get upset, she would bolt and she would take off, and sometimes in freezing cold weather and wearing barely anything. She'd be dressed for inside and it would be freezing cold. We lived in the forest and she would take off and you'd have to go out and try to find her. And it was frightening trying to find her. What I did learn, my number one takeaway from that is about restraining. I thought the safest thing to do was to restrain her. And I, of course, learned through lots of trial and error that actually was harmful for everybody involved. I thought I was protecting us, but her and myself. But invariably, when I restrained her, one or both of us would become even more injured. And it would have been better off to have allowed her to flee or to go to another room or whatever she wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Just let her go. But I was old school.
Because I was literally, you guys, they can kick back. They have extra strength. I mean, this. I've always been real on this page. You all should know me. If those who do not, well, welcome. But it is so important, and we're not down talking our children. It's just the other side that I did not know. They just said, "Oh, your child has autism." That's it. That's it. Maybe you're one of the parents that just found out. My aunt told me, if you don't know the strategies and the tools and the techniques for your child, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So I know how to redirect. I know how to do I know to give choices. I know how to do those other things that can support her while she's making that decision. Tantrums, you completely ignore. Meltdowns, you allow them to understand the safetyness and the sensory. And sometimes you just have to let that sensory meltdown just go out, how long it's going to be. But restraining, I definitely have realized that it actually is a hindrance. It's not safety. It's not safe when I'm trying to hold her I'm trying to just protect her head, and she's whacking me, type of thing. And I'm almost on them to the floor while she's still having her moment. Just let her be. Just let her be. Make sure everything is safe around her. And I've noticed that when the meltdown comes, again, I am more like, I am here for you versus do not do this. I realize that the words that we say, you guys, affect even the levels of our children. So we say, do not do this, don't hit me. It actually triggers them. But when you say, I'm here for you, when you're ready, you can talk to me. You're not in trouble. That's a big thing, because individuals with, well, most children, I should say, we don't want us to hear you're in trouble, right? But children with autism, they want to have that quote unquote, acceptance, right? So if we're saying they're not in trouble, then they realize, okay, even though I am in this moment of, meltdown, I know that mommy says I'm not in trouble. So mommy's accepting me, not the actual, the outburst or whatever, the sensory overload or whatever that case would be. I'm not in trouble. That means I'm safe in mommy, and mommy understands where I am. So Jasmine's reaction now has been totally different compared to used to be, because I was like, don't hit me, what type of thing. And it was a trigger. But saying, I'm here for you, you're not in trouble, has actually calmed her spirit down. So that's just a little FYI.
Well, I know we're running close to time
Yes.
up, but I wanted to finish up with that notion of, that was my biggest fear. The restraining her was constantly because she would take off out of the house, and I was worried about what would happen to her. Would she be hit by a car? Would she freeze to death out there and no one would find her? That sort of thing. And they have this great program. I think it's pretty much in every city. It's this, where you call ahead to the police department and you can have your information of your child on file with them, so that when you call them to say my child is missing, lost, took off, ran off, whatever terminology you want to use, when you do that, they will already have your information, and they will quickly be able to, it won't be like you're having to make a new report about your child. They'll already know. They'll already know what to look for, how old they are, where you live. They already know all that stuff. So the second that your child takes off, you could make that phone call and they just find your child a lot quicker, is the idea. And I wish they'd have had that.
They do have ankle bracelets. I know that people, like from the police station. And I know some people, they don't like it, but it actually does work. There is a track, obviously, if they are runner. I mean, really be honest with you, I'd rather have a child who has, a track versus them hitting, them, or like you said, a report from someone not knowing. And then, like you said, new reports, that takes about 10-15 minutes. And that child, where's your child? So it's so important to really think about those things, you guys.
Yeah, I wish they'd have had that program, or at least if they had it, I didn't know about it. I wish that I had known about it. I think it became, once she was like a very late teenager, maybe into early adulthood, that they had that, that they started doing that. But what a great program to be able to access that, to just have that information. So that way, when they hear your child's name, they know immediately and they can go out looking. They know where to look. They know, because you've already put on file things like where she might run to. They know where to look for her already. It just speeds things along, and would, potentially save them from being out there in the elements and from anything that might happen to them. But I wish I had understood that restraining was not the best plan, but that's what I thought. I was keeping her safe from taking off. I didn't want her to take off. Now, if I was to do it over again, I wouldn't restrain her. And if she took off, I would call the police, but I would have already have made this report with them, so they'd already know what to look for. And, it would happen, hopefully quickly, and that they could locate her and get her safely back home, or, whatever. So the good news, we're going to have to jump ahead because we're out of time. But the good news is that she got her driver's license at 19, and she is 21, lives on, that's a whole nother subject matter, but she is transgender and had top surgery when she was 20 and is now a male. And so he is 21 and lives on his own, and has a full-time job, and he's amazing with numbers. He's always been amazing with numbers, and even with a limited amount of college, he is an accountant. So who knew? I mean, you've just listened to this story. Would you think, when you're hearing all of this, would you think that that is a person who's going to be driving and going to college and having a full-time accountant job? You would not think that. And I'm here to tell you, don't give up hope, and do not think for a second that what you're seeing right now is what it will always be, because chances are it won't. Chances are there will be some progression. I'm not saying every autistic child is going to drive. I have 3 children, only 2 of them drive. So, that's not something that every child is going to meet the same things. And not all of them are going to be able to work, and not all of them are going to be able to work full time. And we all have our, strengths or things. But I'm just saying, all 3 of my children, despite this upbringing, this sounds like chaos, that you couldn't imagine that these children would have full-time jobs and be productive parts of society. And it's amazing. And you just got to hold out hope, and you've got to just keep on keeping on, and never give up. And you're going to need to give them challenges, but you also need to make some accommodations. It's a balancing act. And I just want to encourage you. I know this is the part where we're of encouragement.
Yes.
It's difficult to sit and listen to for an hour long about all these problems and issues without having some kind of, well, where's the positive in this? How did this turn out? The best advice I ever got was at a convention, a lecture that I helped to get to a very small town that I lived in. I mentioned before in one of our other segments about a grassroots bringing speakers to this area, this small town area that didn't get to access that kind of information. But I went to this lecture, and I raised my hand and I said, I'm an autistic person. I have 3 autistic children, and I wanted to know what's the best advice you could give me. And the speaker said, the best advice I can give you is to have fun. Well, I didn't hear the rest of the lecture because I didn't listen to anything else after that, because in my head, I was so angry with the speaker. I couldn't even think straight about how out of touch they must be, that they thought having fun was the answer to my problems. How I thought having fun, we're just trying to stay alive. We're having fun isn't even part of, that's not even on my, game plan at all. I'm just looking, how do we keep alive till tomorrow? That's what I'm trying to do. So I went home that day and I was just fuming, that was just eating me alive. I can't believe this person, they're a specialist in the field, and that's the best they could give me is have fun. I mean, they just don't understand at all. And the more I thought about it, I realized they're absolutely right. We were in such a survival mode that there was no fun. There was no point in living, really, because we were just all miserable. And once I got that through my thick skull, that we needed to figure out how to have fun, how to make time for fun, how to orchestrate fun. You schedule it if you have to, but you have to get fun in there somewhere. Because it's
right now, you're definitely speaking to me right now.
Because it was not healthy the way we were living, and I don't know how we could have gone on that way. And so we have learned to make light of it when we can. I don't mean we're making fun of autistic people, do not get me wrong, but there is humor in it, and you can see humor in it. Where four people living in a household, all with OCD, it could be pretty funny if you look at it from a funny perspective. Four people with their funny traits, four people with their quirks, there was a lot of stuff going on, and you had to just sometimes make light of it, sometimes figure out how ways to see it as funny. And then we had to orchestrate fun in our life. What one thing today are we going to do? Something fun today for everybody. Now, was it going to be fun for everybody? Somebody was going to be miserable, I guarantee you. But that's not the point. We went to Disneyland once, and the whole bunch of them, you'd think that was our big trip. We only went once, and we would never go again. But we went because I thought that was what every parent needed to take their children to Disneyland. So I thought that's what we needed to do. But what I didn't understand was that my neurotypical children may have seen it that way. Mine were so complaining. They complained about the lines. They complained about the heat. They complained about people in their space. If a ride was shut down, then they were upset. That was the one they wanted. It was just one meltdown after the next. So it wasn't the glorious time of their lives that I envisioned in my head. And so afterwards, I realized they were miserable. So I'm not saying it's miserable for everybody. And this is not to say don't take your kids to Disneyland, but I'm certainly not saying that. But for us, it was not the best plan. And things are a lot different there now than they were then. There's a lot of accommodations they make and things that they didn't do back then.
Yes, like Sesame Place, you guys, Sesame Place in Philadelphia, they have accommodation for individuals that have autism. I would just research those type of things. And there's special days and special times, but yes, definitely.
But we just, even if it was 5 minutes, you wouldn't think that makes a difference, but 5 minutes of doing something pleasant for them each day is something they have to look forward to. It makes it all worthwhile for them.
And I recommend you guys, like parents, we think about those things. But I would definitely, if they can't verbalize it, have pictures or whatever, ask them, what would you like to do today? Because, and it's not, someone told me this, like, don't ask, like, if your child asks you, can you play with me, mommy? And then you play with them, but you're telling, okay, let's do this. That's not the point of her asking you, can you play with me? She wants you to do the way that she wants to do it. So that's the part of fun she is looking at versus, oh, this may not, I'm just playing with her, But if she doesn't want you to play like that, that might be a meltdown. That might be a tantrum. So it's like, can you play with me? And then I ask, okay, what do you want to play? Type of thing. And then whatever she wants to play, that's how we're going to play. Why? Because that's fun to her. Definitely.
Right. Well, what's fun to one isn't necessarily fun to another. And so I certainly learned that. It's an obvious, but it's not obvious to everyone. And that would be to give options. Whenever possible, give options. It sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how many people don't give options. I've done a lot of observing for people to, they hire me to observe and then give my 2 cents kind of thing. And it's amazing how many times I see that they could have given an option and they didn't. And that option would have kept them from having the meltdown. Instead of, this is what we're wearing, it's, did you want to wear the red pants or the pink pants? There's a control sense when they feel like they got what they wanted. Make sure that you don't give them options that you're not okay with. If you really wanted them to wear the pink pants, then don't offer the red and then get upset when they choose the red. You want to make sure you give options that you're okay with.
If I would have known about that a while ago with why am I allowing her to wear the gloves and it's 90 degrees outside? and I'm taking it off and she's putting it back on, and I'm just let her wear it. That's her option. That's her choice.
So those options, and you would be surprised how many times it can be for an activity. Did you want to do this first or that first? You know, just even those things, instead of saying we're doing this right now. Well, these children are sometimes, they don't want to be told what to do, but if they think they got to make the choice, it's an altogether different story. So
you're homeschooling choice. If you're homeschooling your child, I'm not talking about if you're in public school and private school and they have the set time and set. If you're homeschooling your child and you can switch math versus science, give them that choice. We do it all the time.
Yeah. You know, there is something to be said, some things for scheduling, but the options make a difference, even in schoolwork. Did you want to do the spelling first or did you want to do the math first? I mean, really, does it matter? It really doesn't. Sometimes we get stuck in things about how they have to go. Oh, we do this at 10 and we do this at 10:30. Why? Why do you have to have math at 10:30? Why can't math be at 10? There's no real reason why it can't, but sometimes we just get stuck in our own whatever about how things have to be.
And we don't, yes, exactly. I've learned that.
Just have to get out of that and learn to make accommodations when possible. But I definitely, you know, I'm big on accommodations for sure, but I'm also big on challenges. If you just, I talked about this in the last segment about my son having a friend who was also on the spectrum, and that parent of that child didn't challenge the child at all. When anything even remotely seemed like it might agitate them even before they were agitated, it's like they wanted, I'm not certainly saying that we want agitation, and I'm not saying to encourage agitation, but I am saying it can't always go their way and it can't always be perfect. You know, there has to be a little bit of a challenge sometimes for them. Otherwise, you don't grow. They're not going to be able to grow if they're not forced to have to comply to something sometime. And so you do want to give them a little bit of a challenge. You just have to know, when is the challenge too much? When do I need to pull back a little bit? When do I need to make more accommodations? So that's a, you know, that's a balancing act as well. But it's important to not say, my first husband was very big on saying that, you know, that he felt like they could will it away. So if they could will away their behavior, and that's not really how it works. You can't just say, I want you to behave, so you're going to behave, you know. That was very old school kind of thinking. I said sit there, so you're going to sit. Like, not necessarily. That's not how it's not how it's.
Why can't they read standing up? Right. That's how I started doing. Okay, you want to stand up and read? Go ahead, stand up and read. It's not harmful to the as long as it's safe.
Right.
What's the point, you guys? Like, parents, it's let them be.
But it's very hard. It's very old school kind of way of thinking, and we are very rigid in our thinking of, you have to do it a certain way. I was homeschooling, and this other child that I mentioned, their parent homeschooled, and at one point the boys would homeschool together. And she said how great they were doing, and I came to her house to see, and I was mortified. My child was on the floor, curled up in a ball while she was trying to read to him. And I said, you're not paying attention. You know, you got to sit in the chair and pay attention. And she said, no, he's fine. And I said, he's not fine. That's disrespectful. He can't be on the floor curled up in a ball. He needs to sit in the chair and listen to you. And she said, I assure you, he's heard every word that I've said. You can ask him questions and he will answer questions about what I have said. And that was like this like light bulb epiphany went off in my head all of a sudden, that I was like, and he was 12 by that point, but it suddenly went off in my head of, oh my goodness, what is my problem? Why does he have to sit in the chair? Why does he have to sit up straight in the chair? Why do things have to be? That's just in my head that it has to be that way. He learned better on the floor, curled up in a ball with a coat over him, and he was pretending to be a rock, and he heard every word she said. But if I had made him sit in the chair and forced him to cooperate that way, he wouldn't have taken it in because he would have been too upset, too stressed out. He probably would have had a meltdown. He wouldn't have learned anything. And I learned so much that one day about about all these things that I thought had to be a certain way. Everything had to be just so. We sit in a chair and we sit straight up and we do this and we do that and everything was just so. And none of that was needed. There's no reason it had to be. And we do this at 10 o'clock and we do this at 10:30. And no, why does it have to be that way? And, you know, there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who are probably listening and thinking that this is crazy talk. And they're probably thinking, you know, you can just, because you're not expecting them to do it, then that's why they don't do it. Well, there's something to be said for expectation.
We will say if you force someone to do something they don't want to do, trust me, they're gonna show you how much they don't like it. That's what we're trying to tell y'all.
So there's something to be said for rising to the occasion. That's that challenge part that I'm talking about. But you do it in small steps. You know, let's try to sit at the table for 1 minute. Excellent. We did a great job sitting at the table for 1 minute. And then you build up to your 15 minutes or your half hour or whatever. You know, it's these you just do it in baby steps. But you can't say, you know, you're going to sit here for an hour at the table with everybody and not move and sit there and eat and cooperate and do whatever. Like,
at 2 years old.
I mean, you can say that, but it's not going to go the way that you would like it to go. But, you know, it's just slow baby steps. That's all. The other, two other real quick things. I know we're over time. So 2 quick things I wanted to tell you. What one was about, I mentioned in the other segment about hiding your diagnosis. People wanting to hide it from teachers or hide it from friends or whatever. Even hiding it from the child. Some people, they're hiding it because they think somehow this label is going to change things. They think that they're going to be treated differently. They're going to be looked down upon. Somehow they think of a diagnosis as being shameful in some way or another. My kids actually are the ones that called me out on this. And I still remember the day it happened. Because we would meet people and they'd hear me telling people about that my children are autistic. And one day, my daughter said to me, "Hey, Mom, how come you always tell other people when you're talking to them that we're autistic, but you never tell them that you're autistic?" And like, wow, out of the mouths of babes, it occurred to me, she's right. I was not sharing that I was autistic, and the message I sent my children by doing that was that it needed to be hid, that I was ashamed of it, that it was a secret. And I was ashamed, and it was a secret. And I was worried about what people would think of me. I was worried that they would judge me, that they wouldn't think that I was intelligent or capable. And that same day, I stopped that. And from that day forward, I told people that I am autistic, that we are all autistic. And I told my employers, when I went on a job interview, I told my employer that I was autistic. That was the first time I'd ever done that. Up until then, I had been living like this secret life, like this hidden thing about me that I don't want anyone to know about or find out. That was so unhealthy. And the moment that I embraced it and shared it, it was the start of a whole new world for me. Life became so much easier when you're not trying to hide something, when you're not trying, when I could just be open about who I am or what my quirks are or whatever. And I found that people were very accommodating. It helped in educating the world. I mean, how many people I was able to tell about autism, that learned about autism, that were then able to take that information and help other children because I was willing to share.
And I'm glad that you are sharing. You guys, and we already got the date for part 3, so definitely, yes, absolutely. I'm so happy, so happy.
So it took a little while before I was willing to admit to parents you know, because I'm a teacher, I was worried they'll think that I'm incompetent. They'll think that I shouldn't be teaching their children. I had all these preconceived notions. And like I say, it changed everything when I was able to open up and tell people that I'm autistic, and it was a strength instead of a weakness.
Mhm.
And they saw that as a strength. And I thought, wow, I've been hiding this for so long for no reason at all. And I'm just very grateful to my brilliant children who called me out on it and said, hey, this is not right. You're acting like this is something to be ashamed of. And so never be ashamed of it, and feel free to share it. And that's how you'll educate the world, is by sharing it. Absolutely. And the message that you're sending to your children is that it's okay, not that it's a hidden thing that we have to keep secret. So
Awesome.
so thank you for having me.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Well, I want to thank you, Lori, again for this. Oh my goodness. Like each time it's building up. It's building up. Definitely, you guys. So I think it's Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday we actually have a Zoom check-in for all parents. Any parents who would like to come on and just vent, here's that opportunity. And of course, have that support group at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, you guys, we're gonna log off, but definitely, you guys, if you have not checked out part 1, definitely check on part 1. Part 2 will be uploaded on YouTube in about 20 minutes, you guys. And then part 3 is coming up soon. So you guys have an awesome rest of the evening. And also, I will see you guys on Wednesday on the Zoom call for all parents, you guys. Thank you, Lori.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.